All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Remember, folks, this show does not run rum. I promise. Not drinking. Promise. The show does not run on freedom fumes alone. You see where I was getting that M in there? Fumes? Anyway, I don't know. If you're watching me on Rumble, smash that green $sign during the show to drop a Rumble rant. It's kind of like tossing me a cold one this early in the morning. Should I be saying that? I don't know. With all my Merble malfunctions. Anyway, it keeps the vibes high and the mics on. And if you want to go all in, go ahead and click that subscribe for just $5 a month. Your support helps me to fight the good fight. Man, we better just get into this. I feel like this may be one of those days where my brain has words, thoughts, ideas, and then I want to get them out. And there's like road bumps to my tongue. So we'll see. We'll see if I make, I like using that phrase, Merble malfunctions. I think I heard it in a song like many years ago when I was like a teenager. So might have a few of those today. We'll see. Anyway, some announcements really quickly. Tomorrow, I will not be in. Okay, I've got some appointments that I got to take care of in the morning. And so to make sure that I'm not late for those, I will have to forego streaming in the morning. So I do apologize, but I will not be in tomorrow. I will be back Monday morning with another bill review. So look forward to that. All right, let's get right into this, guys. I got a fair amount to cover this morning. So first up, peace in the Middle East. Is it possible? Is it going to happen? Seems like it might. So Trump here said, I'm very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed upon line as the first steps toward a strong, durable, and everlasting peace. All parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world. Go and move this up a little bit here for you guys. All right. Great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel and all surrounding nations, and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers, Donald J. Trump. All right. So it might actually happen. Impressive. Here's some audio of Trump discussing it. Let's go over to the Dad TV here. There we go. And then over on Dad TV, this is what he said.
It's a great honor to be involved in it. We had some tremendous help, as you know, with everybody from Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and Marco, and we had everybody. JD, the whole group was just amazing, and the military was, as you know, very instrumental in getting this done. We have a great military with great leadership. The whole world came together, to be honest. So many countries that you wouldn't have even thought of it, they came together. The world has come together around this deal. And that's something I would say that without that wouldn't happen. So many countries that you wouldn't have thought of have wired their best wishes and their commitment to do whatever is necessary. The countries surrounding have all signed. I mean, they're all signed up, and it's been really an amazing period of time, and so great for Israel, so great for Muslims, for the Arab countries, and so great for this country, for the United States of America, and that we could be involved in, making a deal like this happen, because it was, many years they talked about peace in the Middle East. This is more than Gaza. This is peace in the Middle East, and it's an incredible thing.
All right. So maybe it'll happen, right? Like he's gotten other countries on board. Now, look, here's the thing. We should be excited about the prospect of peace, but we should also remember nothing is certain until it happens. And the most important thing is what happens 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, right? If if after a year, maybe 2 years, I don't really have a specific time frame, but if after some time we see that that they're not lobbing missiles, they're not attacking each other. If we see that as like once they agree to a peace deal, and it's now where we've got this, I don't want to say a ceasefire, but now there are no more attacks expected to happen after a particular point. That's when the clock starts running. And I'd say within about a year, like that's when he really, really should get the kudos. Now, he should get the kudos now, right? Like a tempered kudos. Like, wow, that's really great news to hear. I want to see it actually happen, right? And then once it happens, then we can start watching and saying, all right, is this going to be sustained? Because that's ultimately I don't care about the fanfare and the excitement right now if in 6 months, hostilities resume. That it wouldn't mean anything. So we've got to just kind of be excited, but keep your head, keep yourself focused on a long-term goal. Now, the president went on to say this, and I thought this was actually kind of interesting as well. So let's go back to Dad TV here real quick, and then we will play this.
It's brought the whole world together. It's amazing. I've never seen anything. It's so good for Israel. I spoke to Bibi Netanyahu just a little while ago. He called. He said, I can't believe it. He said, everybody's liking me now. Meaning
everybody's liking me now. I mean, look, there is a reputation that the state of Israel has. So we're clear. We're not talking about Jews, okay? All those fools out there that want to conflate any kind of criticism or even praise, with Israel, with all Jews, they can just go, kick some rocks. Okay, there is a distinct difference. There are Jews, there are Israelis who oppose some of the Israeli actions, right? And I've said before, if I criticize my government, why wouldn't I criticize any other government? None of them are off the table. But I think it's kind of interesting that he's like, Bibi Netanyahu, everybody's liking me. Well, again, this is going to be a matter of what happens in 6 months, what happens in 1 year. Right? Are we going to sign an agreement and then Israel take some action and then be like, wait a minute, I thought we had peace, right? So again, this is long term. We can be excited now, right? There is something worth saying. That's awesome. I really like that. I want to see peace. We also have to be mindful that, the peace process is going to be more long term. And we got to at least give it a year before we know for sure or have any real confidence in the peace being sustained. Let's continue listening.
Him, he said, I said, more importantly, they're loving Israel again, and they really are. I said, Israel cannot fight the world, baby. They can't fight the world, and he understands that very well. So,
whoever's clip I swiped here, or somebody's in the background laughing or something, I don't know. But anyway, he's making a good point. Like, the PR for Israel has just been going down the tubes lately. And it's because people are looking and they're saying, okay, look, we agree you had the right to attack Hamas for Hamas attacking you. And many of us would say, we don't really care that much about Hamas. But when we start seeing civilian after civilian after civilian, dozens and hundreds and thousands of civilians being killed, at a certain point, yes, we turn our face away from you and we're like, yeah, you're this is not, and saying you're dropping leaflets, that's just not going to cut it after a while. Not for some of us, it's never cut it for me, but since I've been a libertarian, but I think this is going to go toward people looking at Israel in a better light. And perhaps, Bibi Netanyahu as well. I don't know. I'm personally not going to be like, wow, he's a nice guy now all of a sudden. No, I'm still going to remember all the things that he's done in the past, but I will be able to separate that from, hey, where are we now? Where are we right now?
it's amazing the way it's all come together, and it's a beautiful picture. I don't know if it could ever happen again. It was just a set of circumstances, like, for instance, taking out the potential nuclear power of Iran. So many different things happened that were so amazing. It's a lot of talent involved, I'll tell you, but there was a certain degree of luck too. You know, you need luck also. There is such a thing as luck.
So it's interesting that he makes this point about luck, and then he said, hey, this might never happen again. I fear that he's correct. If and I'm not trying to suggest that, like, there's something magical necessarily about Trump, but if Trump is not able to broker a deal, I don't know that anybody else will be able to, because he seems so far to have a fair amount of influence over there. I mean, we are at least talking about it. He's got like some 20-point plan. This is the very beginning of it. They're talking about releasing the hostages on both sides. So, like, with all of these things, when you put them all together and you say, all right, what are we working with here? I think he might be right. There is a certain amount of luck. There is a certain amount of the circumstances have lent itself to this opportunity. We may not get that opportunity again. So hopefully this goes through and is sustained. And if Trump manages to negotiate peace, real peace, long-term peace between Palestine and Israel in the Gaza area, this will be nothing short of monumental. And it'll be a defining moment in his presidency, a good one for that matter. So that's a positive thing. We'll be watching that to see how things play out. Best of luck to the president. I really hope that this actually does go through. That will be phenomenal. You guys know I am very anti-war. I would like the killing to stop. Figure out what it's going to take. Both sides agree. I know some people might say, well, it's unfair if this or that. Don't really care. All I care about is that both sides can find some sort of agreement. If that means somebody gives up some territory, whatever, like, as long as they agree and the violence stops, I'm content with it. And I will reiterate, negotiating for peace is, in my mind, pretty much the only involvement that the United States has or should have. So, you know, like, anything else is a different matter. But on this, kudos to the president. All right, so let's get on to something else. We're going to switch gears here. We're going to talk a little bit about Antifa. Now, this is, I went from some praise to the Trump administration. Now we're going to get into some criticism because I have some problems here. So let me play this clip, this next clip here. This is from Kristi Noem, and here's what she said during this roundtable. So Trump invited his people from his administration, along with a bunch of influencers who are specifically and allegedly, the influencers that you want to talk to when it comes to Antifa. Now, there's some question as to whether or not these were the right people. We're not going to get into that. I just want to talk about some of the things that came out of this roundtable. So let's play this first clip here.
One of the individuals we arrested recently in Portland was the girlfriend of one of the founders of Antifa, and that we are hoping that as we go after her, interview her, and prosecute her, we will get more and more information about the network and how we can root them out and eliminate them from the existence of American society.
So they have the girlfriend of one of the leaders of Antifa, and they're going to get a lot of information out of that person. Like, she's going to squeal. They're going to squeeze her. She's going to squeal, right? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not buying it. Now, why am I not? Why, DL, who are you to say that Kristi Noem doesn't know what she's talking about? Well, I'm somebody that pays attention. And as it were, let's check out this here. Where we go? I've got some. Where did it go? There you All right. So I've got a couple articles here that we're going to look at, a couple things. So this first one is from Britannica. Yeah, we're just going to go old school. We're going to look it up in the encyclopedia. All right. So I looked up the Antifa entry in Britannica. Is it too much? I zoom out too much? Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. I guess it didn't like that much zoom. It was like, hey, all right, you just get a white screen. All right. So I'm not going to read the whole definition, but I just want to point out how it defines Antifa or how it describes them. The term Antifa is borrowed from the German Antifa, itself a shortened form of, let me see if I can say this, antifascistisch. I think that's how you say it. Antifascistisch. I think it's it. Which formed part of the name of a multi-party front initiated by the German Communist Party in 1932 to counter Nazism. In recent years, so that's where Antifa originated. Like, you can go and find old pictures from the 1930s and 40s of Antifa with even the same logo. Okay, so they formed in the 1930s. So a lot of people online were making fun of this. They were like, "Oh, the White House has arrested their leader. What are they, like 100 years old?" In recent years, Antifa has been used in reference to participants in left-wing protest against police brutality, racism in the United States from the mid-2010s, and to counter demonstrators at the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Conservative pundits and politicians, including Republican President Donald Trump, have repeatedly called Antifa a terrorist organization. Though it has no leadership or overt structure and is more accurately characterized as a movement, an association, or merely a set of behaviors and tactics used by far-left protesters. Okay? So, no leadership. This is Encyclopedia Britannica telling us that Antifa does not have leadership. It also does not have any clear structure. I just had Carlin Bosenko on last Thursday night, a week ago, and she's been researching Antifa for like several years, the radical far left. She's also been going to their events. She's also been tuning into their Zoom calls and their streams and whatnot, and she streams their streams and discusses them. So she is very, very knowledgeable, and this is something that she pointed out, and she said, I don't think that the Trump administration knows what they're talking about because they keep presenting Antifa as if it were this top-down organization where you just go cut the head off and bam, you've got them. So and I'm not just taking her word. Even Encyclopedia Britannica says this, okay? And then it says, it kind of describes it as a set of behaviors or tactics used by far-left protesters. So it's like this is more of an idea, okay? And I'm not defending them, but if you don't know who somebody is, what it means to be a thing, then how can you combat it? And I've gotten into it on social media with people because they're like, oh, you don't know who you're talking. It's Antifa. And I'm like, okay, but who is Antifa? Tell me. And people are like, and they're like, yeah, this is, and they'll give me this gibberish of what they think Antifa is. And it's always described as some sort of organization that has some sort of leadership that you could topple just by going after the leadership, or as you might see on social media and news reports, going after the big money donors, which the Trump administration came out and they said, all right, they seem to really, really be sure that they're going to make a link between George Soros and Antifa. Good luck. As we heard last week with Carlin on the show, it's pretty much mostly crowdsourced. That's where their funding comes from basically each other. A little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, a little bit of money there, right? There's no Soros funnel going to Antifa. And we're going to find out why here in just a minute. Most participants in Antifa actions subscribe to some form of left-wing political ideology and are therefore, at best, ambivalent toward liberal capitalist democracy. despite their efforts to defend the status quo against right-wing extremists. Okay, I think it was it. Yeah, that's all I had in there. Okay, so then we jump over to, all right. So this is a 2020 document called In Focus by the library, hosted over on Congress's website, called "Are Antifa Members Domestic Terrorists? Background on Antifa and Federal Classification of Their Actions." So let's go through and see what it says here. On May 31st, 2020, President Donald Trump announced via Twitter that the United States will be designating Antifa. This term is applied to an organization of loosely affiliated individuals who describe themselves and their ideological outlooks as Antifa, shorthand for anti-fascist, as a domestic terrorist group. So he said in 2020, like, we are going to designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. But even here, in the very first sentence, this term is applied to an organization of loosely affiliated individuals who describe themselves and their ideological outlooks as Antifa. Okay? Do you see the problem here? Like, so far, everybody, like, I had Carlin on, and I know that some people criticize her for one reason or another. They say that she's not the expert. Maybe it's Andy No. Maybe it's all the people that got invited to the roundtable. Let me explain to you how this works, people. The White House invites who they feel are going to cooperate with their agenda, right? They're not going to bring somebody in that says, no, you have it all wrong for a roundtable. That's not how this works, okay? And so they invited this roundtable of people, yet we have Encyclopedia Britannica, which is in agreement with Carlin, which is in agreement with even this report from Donald Trump's term, right? Like citing Donald Trump, where they're acknowledging that Antifa is extremely decentralized. Okay, but let's keep going. I'm going to skip over some of this stuff. Founded in 2007, the Rose City Antifa in Portland, Oregon, is the oldest U.S. group to use Antifa in its moniker. So it's the oldest one. Like a lot of, and some people might have heard of them. They might say, oh, Rose City Antifa. Yeah, that's Antifa. Well, as Carlin pointed out last week, she said most of these groups do not use Antifa in their title. So how do you identify this group as Antifa? Like, you're going to have to infiltrate. You're going to have to be part of the group. And since there are probably thousands of groups because they're small cells, that means you have a lot of legwork ahead of you. You see the problem here? All right, so it continues on. The U.S. Antifa movement appears to be decentralized, consisting of independent, radical, like-minded groups and individuals. Its tenets can echo the principles of anarchism, socialism, and communism. Members do not necessarily adhere to just the tenets of these philosophies. However, the way I'm reading, I'm sorry, among many other things, they may also support environmentalism, the rights of indigenous populations, and gay rights. Okay, so there's Antifa. If somebody says, I'm Antifa, what they're telling you is that they subscribe to one or more of a wide body of more left-leaning ideologies. So they may be an anarchist, and they don't want any government whatsoever. They may prefer a socialist government. They may want a communist government. They may be more about environmentalism. They may be more about rights for indigenous people, gay rights, right? They're going to have varying levels of priorities of these things and other ideas. So this is the problem with just trying to say, like, Antifa. It's like, what does that actually mean? It's not like if you said something like, let me think, what's a good example? Well, it's like many things. If you say libertarian, there's a wide range of what it means to be a libertarian. Not to some of us. I mean, I have a very narrow view of it, but there are other people that will say, I'm a libertarian. I believe in these things. We internally have what we might consider to be left-leaning libertarians. We have right-leaning libertarians. We have anarchist libertarians. All right, we have a wide variety of them. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, Antifa, it means this. This is how it works. Let's go get them. You've got to dig in a little deeper. Contemporary U.S. Antifa adherents likely do not share a list of enemies, as the movement lacks a unifying organizational structure or detailed ideology that might shape such a list. Okay? Right now, Antifa, the ones that we're seeing, they're out after ICE. But what they're saying here is not everybody necessarily either sees ICE as their enemy, which they more than likely do, or more importantly, has ICE as their top priority enemy. So there could easily be some Antifa elements somewhere that are more like, yeah, we're more about the environment, or yeah, we're just anti-government altogether, or we're anti the government we have, right? We would prefer to have a socialist government or a communist government, right? They might prioritize those things, and they could be individual at the individual level. They could be at the group level. There is no consistency here. That is the problem. All right, continuing on. Local groups do not necessarily listen to each other's pronouncements and might aim their animus at enemies specific to their group. Like, what did I just say? Right? They have priorities. Right? This is not a unified, if you're Antifa, this is our goal. You're either with our goal or you're not with our goal. They may have a more broad goal. You might say, okay, well, they're anti-government. But what does that actually mean to be anti-government? Are they anti this government or anti all government? Right? And then you have to talk about, what are they willing to do? Are all of them willing to engage in violence, or only some of them? Because at the end of the day, you can be an anti-government. You could say, I would prefer a socialist government. You could say, I prefer a communist government. And guess what? That's not illegal. There's nothing to put somebody in jail for. I could sit here on my stream if I wanted to and just simply talk about the utopian, libertarian government that I would love to have that vastly differs from the one that we have now. I could talk about that every single day and how we need to get rid of the government we have and institute my new libertarian utopia government. And you know what? There would be nothing illegal about it. Now, if I started suggesting violence or criminal acts, that would be a different story. This is the problem. This is the concern that I have with the administration. Going on, it says, further, fascism is notoriously difficult to define. Thus, particular Antifa groups may oppose different things based on how they identify who or what is fascist. See the point? Like, they have reiterated everything I've just said. This is coming from Congress. This is not me just making it up. Go down here. While few concrete Antifa principles exist across all groups, U.S. supporters have articulated 4 shared quote-unquote obligations. According to some adherents, Antifa groups must, number 1, track the activity of fascist groups. Okay, well, nothing illegal about that. You can totally do that if you want. Right? You could track all the groups. Like the ADL, they track groups they deem to be hate groups, whether we agree with them or not. That's what they do. Nothing illegal about that. Number 2, oppose their public organizing. Okay, well, that depends on what that means. If you're just going out and you're making a demonstration, which makes people less likely to want to come to an event, okay, that's legal, right? Annoying, but it's legal. You can do that. If you want to go and you want to damage private property, well, that's a different story. So just the mere fact of saying I oppose these fascist groups, groups that I have deemed fascist, I oppose them publicly organizing, that is not in itself a crime. So there's no crime so far. These 2. Number 3, support anti-fascist allies attacked by fascists or arrested by police. Okay? Nothing illegal about that. So if I'm out and I'm protesting and my friend is protesting and they get, pepper sprayed by the police, I can oppose that. Now, I can support my ally there and oppose the police in doing that. A lot of it depends on how am I supporting? How am I opposing? If I'm contributing money to their legal bills so that a clever lawyer can get them out of jail, okay, well, there's nothing illegal about that. Now, if I go and I attack the police that have shot pepper spray at my friend, there is something illegal. So again, a lot of it is It's determined by what it is they actually do. How does this play out in real life? And then number 4, not cooperate with law enforcement. Okay, well, there's nothing illegal. In fact, there's nothing illegal about that because many lawyers will tell you, shut up, right? So if the police pull me over and then decide they need to arrest me, and then they arrest me, and then I don't talk, that's not cooperating, right? It doesn't say to resist arrest. It doesn't say to fight back at the police. It just says don't cooperate. Well, I don't have to cooperate. I could just be quiet. Hey, I'm pleading the 5th. I want my lawyer. That's all I'm telling you. Get me my lawyer. I will talk to them. That's it, right? That's not cooperating. I don't have to give you any information. Right? So when they say, well, we have the girlfriend of the leader, if she's truly Antifa, she's not going to cooperate with law enforcement. And her fellow Antifa folks are going to support her because she was been arrested. She's now in custody. So they're going to probably crowdsource, get a clever lawyer to either get her out on bail or, free her from any charges or whatever. So I presume that they already have a plan in place. And that's beside the point that I don't think that they actually have any kind of leader or leader's girlfriend. That just doesn't make any sense. I feel like they're treating this as if it was The Sopranos. Like they had the mob and they had this hierarchy. And then if you got the girlfriend of, one of the bosses or, one of the made men, then, she might have some information, not a lot, but she might have enough for the government to work with. And if they can squeeze her, then she'll squeal, right? I think they're treating it like that. And I think they're going to come up empty-handed. So let's continue on. What else is said in this? Down here, while the FBI has confirmed that Antifa and other extremists are subjects of ongoing domestic terrorism investigations, it declines to designate any organization a domestic terrorist organization. Doing so may infringe on First Amendment protected speech. Belonging to an ideological group in and of itself is not a crime in the United States. Further, as previously stated, Antifa is a decentralized movement, and law enforcement designation of Antifa as a singular group may prove to be difficult. Now, this may seem to be contradictory to what the Trump administration did, where they actually said, hey, here's my memo, here's my executive order, I am now declaring Antifa a terrorist organization. Okay, you can declare them a terrorist organization, but that doesn't necessarily mean that whatever you do will hold up in court. So when it comes, because that's when the rubber hits the road. When you get to court and you have to, make your case before a judge, and they're going to make their case that, maybe they were arrested illegally, maybe the definition was too broad, whatever. They're going to have their lawyers out there. So the real question is, will this stand in a court of law? The Trump administration, Trump can make any executive order that he wants, right? And he could say a lot of things. He can have these meetings with people, and then at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, what can you actually do that's within the boundaries of the law? That's what matters. So I'm not particularly convinced. I think that was into that. Yeah. So that's the end of that. So I'll keep watching. We'll see what ends up happening, right? And again, this is not a defense of Antifa. This is just me simply saying, I don't think that the Trump administration they know what they're doing right now. So before I get into the next one here, let me take a look at some comments. I got some comments going on here, and try to narrow my comments associated. This is a day where I do multiple topics, not necessarily one single topic throughout the whole episode. So let me try to get to some comments here and see what you guys are saying so that it makes sense. So let's see here. DJ Kunimitsu, I think I said that right, but don't be angry if I got it wrong. Says, just logged on. Thank you so much for your help. Spread the word, educate the people. It is entirely up to us to stop the inevitable demise of our freedom. Yes, that's what I'm trying to do, right? I oppose a lot of things that a lot of people might say, well, do you support? No, it's not that I support them. I want to get it right. And I want to do it the right way. And I do not believe, I don't support this idea that we have to use a heavy hand because a heavy hand was used against us. And we're actually going to talk about that a little bit later. I don't believe that's the right process, the right way to go about this. I think the way to go about this is to hold to our principles and be clever in how we implement them. And, if somebody's abusing power, the easiest thing to do is, rather than abuse power yourself, simply go out and remove that power so that it cannot be abused. You can't abuse power if it's not there to have. It's pretty simple. So, and thank you for tuning in, by the way. Let's see. It's not. Trump is an ineffectual and incompetent idiot. On some things, yes. However, I'm going to hold out and keep some hope for Gaza. Hopefully, he is worked out like a real sustainable deal. And if he does, then I will absolutely give him credit for that. But I will hit him hard where I think he's got it wrong. So right now with Antifa, I think he's got it quite wrong. Let's see. Oh no, my VA lady says I'm late and I can't stay long either. That's fine. That's fine. I understand. If you got better things to do than to be in the comments in my show, I understand. I don't know what you could possibly have that's better than the Liberty Dad podcast. But hey, maybe she's got an auntie. I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna. I was just being funny. All right, let's see. Keith says very centralized GOG as a god versus a very centralized government as a god versus a no government at all. So yeah, that's kind of what it is. You got this centralized movement, and I think the problem is we're so used to in our society dealing and operating with centralized movements and organizations that it's very difficult to wrap our head around the idea that a movement can be very decentralized and also be very effective at least in being disruptive. So let's see. I don't know how you did not notice this was episode 600, but this is. I thought about doing something kind of fun, but I was like, I'm not very clever when it comes to that. So we just got to, it's 600. Yay. So let's see. All right. Let's see. All right. Some people's got to go. That's fine. My garden club does not does not lock me. I'm going to try to interpret this. I understand that sometimes, when you're texting out stuff on your phone, it kind of comes across. So I think it's saying my garden club does not send me to camp if I don't show up for a work day. So I agree. I'm not sure where you're going with that. Maybe you put that in the comments and we'll address it more later. I clicked on it before I fully read it, and I thought, and then when I read it, I was like, I'm a little confused here. So I understand, it's 8:15 in the morning. I'm stumbling over my words today. I'm having one of those days. But anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about. So we've got some more stuff with that roundtable here. So Nick Sorter is a journalist. Now, one of the things, look, I support his right to be a journalist, a citizen journalist. I do think that a lot of our new citizen journalists out there are less about journalism and more about activism, or they kind of have a heavier activism component to them, right? That's my perspective. I don't see them necessarily, when I watch their videos, their clips from when they're out on a scene, they seem to have a very clear bias, and almost they're trying to, sometimes, maybe not in Nick's case, agitate. It's because they go out and they're I saw a video yesterday of what's her name? It's the young lady, the conservative lady who got famous. At least I remember her fame getting really popular because she was walking with a rifle slung over her back. I can't remember her. Kate, I think is her name. Can't remember her last name. But I saw a video of her. She went to some event for black folk. I think it was on a college campus. I'm not sure. And she was just walking around. She was like, what's your opinion of Donald Trump? What's your opinion? And she was irritating people because I don't know if it was a political event or not, but the people at the event were irritated with her because they felt like she was being antagonistic. And to a degree, there was some of that, right? I didn't feel like it was your typical journalism where the journalist there may or may not agree, but it's not clear by how they're presenting themselves and the questions that they're asking. That's the kind of journalism that I prefer, because what I want is somebody that's willing to go somewhere, put themselves at risk, and then bring back the information and then let the commentators sort it out and make heads or tails of it. But I would rather journalists just simply get the scoop and then deliver it and say, hey, this thing happened here, right? And to a degree, they will always have bias. Okay? There's no such thing as a reporter, because there's bias in what you choose to cover and what you choose to put out. So there's going to be some bias no matter what. But I feel like it's very evident in most of their clips where their bias is. So I'm not a big fan of that, but nonetheless, I do support it. So here's Nick Sorter. He's talking to the president at their roundtable, and they're talking about flag burning. Now, you might remember back in episode 575, I went into depth on the issue of flag burning. So we talked about some notable court rulings regarding flag burning. We also discussed the history of flag desecration, which includes more than burning. Burning actually started somewhere around the Vietnam War. That's when we started seeing flag burning. Prior to that, flag desecration was actually what was considered flag desecration, and what was a big concern was using flags with promotional material. So in advertisements, that was a big concern. So anyway, let's play this video. Let's go back to the Dad TV, Dad TV, and let's see what we got here. So
years now. So thank you guys so much for taking this seriously. And President Trump, you mentioned that flag. So remember, you put out a truth right after I
That's right. I saw that.
took this flag from that man that was burning it in the street.
I saw it. Do you know who he is?
Oh yeah, I know exactly who it is.
So why don't you give it to Pam? Give it to the Attorney General, and let's start prosecutions.
Yeah.
But prosecution's based on what? That's the concern that I have. If this flag was Nick's flag, somebody took it and lit it on fire, then yes, there's a prosecution to have. You set fire to somebody else's property. And this is kind of what it looks like in the video. It's not clear to me exactly, but I saw the video of Nick with the flag and stomping it out. I believe it was that same flag. He grabs it from somebody else, walks over a few feet, puts it on the ground and stomps out the fire, and then picks it up, and then, kind of criticizes the people for burning a flag. So if Nick took somebody else's flag, then Nick is actually the one that's in the wrong. And yes, we need to be objective and say that, and say, no, flag burning, as long as it's your flag, is legal and protected. So there's nothing to go after. There's no names to. So the question really falls down to, whose flag was it? Was it the protesters' flag? Well, if it is, then they can burn it. If they took the flag from anybody else, then they're wrong. And they should be punished for that. And they should have to, make amends to the person that they took the flag from. Period. End of story. Well, it should be, but it's not. Let's continue.
I actually have a second flag that he tried to burn as well. So I have two of them from the same guy.
Well, you also saw what happened when that flag started burning. Everyone went crazy. And that's when it started, when they started burning.
Okay, so if you remember back in that episode, 575, Trump's executive order on flag burning, the big concern was that what he was going to do was kind of define flag burning as illegal if it incites violence. And so that's why he says this. He's like, well, do you remember what happened? Everybody went crazy. Honestly, I didn't really see everybody go any crazier from the flag burning. Like, that's an absurd thing to me. I've seen people burn flags, and usually what happens is you get like one or two people that get upset about it. Sometimes it's a veteran, and they're like, hey, man, I lost a leg in the war or whatever, right? I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying, like, that tends to be who gets upset about it, or some very staunch conservative person who really has, a deep respect, maybe too much respect for the flag. That's usually what happens. But I don't usually see, like, people just going wildly crazy, like, oh, my God, a flag, riot! Right? I just don't see that. So, and again, you can go back and get the details on that whole executive order and the flag burning, and I go into depth on that. I'm not going to try to do it here. So, really, it matters to me whose flag this was, and then I'm not really convinced that we saw some great, like everything was peaceful, somebody burnt the flag, and then bam, all of a sudden, we've got like this rioting and craziness happen. That doesn't make sense to me because I've not seen it.
The flag. So thank you. If you could give the information, it would be great.
Absolutely.
And at least that horrible night made you famous. You got
He was
something out
already
of it.
I got a text from the President of the United States, so I appreciate that.
And President Trump after that.
Okay, so that's the end of that. So they may go and prosecute people for burning the flag, and I don't know how well that'll hold up. We will see. Okay, I don't know. Now, some problems that I have. Number one, as I just said, burning the flag is protected. But here's the second problem that I have with this whole, they had this round table, and then, now they're like, oh, look at this flag that got burned that I saved. And all right, do you know who it is? Yeah, we're going to, Pam, go after him. Get him, Pam. Right? Here's my problem. This was in Portland. Trump tried to send, to federalize National Guard troops to send to Portland. And the argument was like the lawlessness is so out of hand that we've got to send the National Guard. We've got to federalize the National Guard, send them down there because it's just, out of control. Okay, that's the argument. Okay? I want you to think about this. Their argument was the lawlessness was so bad, we've got to go to the extreme route of federalizing National Guard troops to send to Portland, but they have time to worry about somebody burning a flag. And it may be their flag. I don't know. Right? Like, do you see the problem here? Just think about it for a second. It doesn't really add up. Now, you might say, well, come on, DL. They can do two things at once. Yeah, but these two things are kind of far apart. They don't really make sense. If we've got to federalize National Guard troops and basically put the military in our cities, not for a flag, it's got to be something more serious than that. Especially if there's a question of whether or not the person is burning their own flag, because it's not specifically a thing that if you just burn a flag that you've committed a crime. It's based on whose flag it is. So that's a very important detail, because that can make or break the accusation from government on whether or not you've committed a crime. If it's yours to burn, then their argument that you've committed a crime just becomes that much harder. And again, we've seen a lot of people burn flags throughout this country in many different protests for various reasons, and we did not need to federalize troops over it. So for me, I'm like, if you think the violence and the lawlessness was that bad, perhaps you focus on, I don't know, violence. Deal with that. Stop worrying about a burnt flag. Like if that happens to come across your desk and then that's something you can deal with, then sure, fine, whatever. Like, oh, while we're here, we see that you also burned a flag and it wasn't yours. We're going to get you for that too. But what's happening is they seem to be, this is at the top. This seems to be kind of at the top of the list. This seems to be a priority. Let's deal with the flag burner. If the flag burner is a priority, I think that lends to you didn't need to federalize National Guard troops. Which by the way, I actually argue that they didn't. And you can go back in some of my past episodes and we talk about that. So those are the concerns that I have. Let's check out some comments again real quick, and then we will head on over to the intermission. We'll come back and we'll talk about Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes. So let's see here. Okay, so I guess Larry Sharp is doing a radio show at 8:30. He's on every show you can think of since he's announced governor run for New York. Okay. All right, fair enough. I understand. I get you. If you think Larry Sharp's governor run is more important than the Liberty Day, I'm just kidding. No, you do what you got to do. I totally get it. And good luck to Larry. He did announce yesterday at 5 p.m. on the Kim Iverson show that he was actually going to run for governor of New York. And he gives his rationale on there. I encourage you to go look it up and just watch it. He gives his rationale why, I believe this is the third time, why he believes that this time around he has a much stronger chance than the past times. So go check it out. Obviously still an uphill battle. It is New York. Okay, we're not under any illusion here that all of a sudden now things are gravy for the Libertarian candidate. But he gives some rationale why he thinks he's going to do much better this time. So go check that out. And then let's see here. Yeah, Keith said auto-corrupt. Man, I feel you, Keith. I don't know how many times I've texted something to somebody and I'm like, because here's what happened with the auto-corrupt, right? You type up your message and then your cursor is at the end of the word that you want. You look at it, you confirm it, you hit space, and then you're looking, and then you start typing again. So now you're focused on your next words, and unbeknownst to you, that word is changed. That's happened to me multiple times. And, like I'll post something on social media or I'll send a text message and I'm like, that's not what I said or what I meant. So anyway, fun times. Okay, so that Liberty lady confirms. She said they, meaning this organization. I don't know what the organization was hosting exactly, but it was an event for the black community, or at least aimed at the black community. They purposely put out a sign for her that said no politics at the event because they knew that she would show up. She's always trying to be like Charlie Kirk, but she absolutely is not. So that's correct. Now, not to say that I don't like some of the work or some of the views that she has. There is some crossover there. But I think that Kate and many other people, they like to pretend that they're Charlie Kirk, and they are so far from it. So hopefully we can hold them accountable and we can say, hey, if you're trying to be Charlie Kirk, do better. Plain and simple. Let's see. I like it. Keith says, Larry is good, but Liberty Dad is my preference. Local versus national. I agree. I think it. And then that Liberty lady says, the old New York isn't working anymore. It's time for a new New York, led by Larry Sharp. So there you have it. So go check out Larry Sharp, but not yet. We're going to go to intermission, and then we will come back, and we will talk about, I got a few clips from Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes. They had a nice long chat yesterday. So we'll be right back.
The day I got cited, I was blindsided.
I couldn't believe that I was in America. I left a place where the stuff happens, but not here. Here, this is the land of opportunity.
I didn't do anything wrong.
I just couldn't believe it. I didn't do anything wrong.
You think that you're doing things the right way. You think that you're a law-abiding citizen.
And they said I was under arrest for braiding hair, and they took me to jail.
They seized a little over $100,000 out of my business account here. Took 13 years to get it and less than 13 seconds, I guess, to take it away.
I remember my attorneys telling me, most people don't win against the government.
Because I know now that we have more than just a chance. I know that we're going to keep our homes.
If we win here at the U.S. Supreme Court, it makes a difference for my girls and for so many other families.
I'm fighting back because I don't want to have a lot of other people have to go through the same thing I'm going through with their property getting seized.
We changed the law so that everybody else can be treated fairly.
I want the opportunity
to operate my legal business,
To practice my craft.
To meet the needs of my community in an innovative way.
And someone has to stand up.
All right, let's get into this. So Dave Smith, friend of mine, he had on, or I don't know whose show went on. Maybe they went on just somewhere more neutral, but he got together with Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes, of course, the leader of the Groypers, very charged individual, a lot of background to him. So they had a conversation. Now, here's the thing. Immediately, I will say I support this. 100%. You should. Now, Dave and Nick do not agree on things. They agree on some things, but not everything. I think that you should always be willing to sit down and have a conversation with pretty much anyone. That's how we make a better society. That's how we work out our differences. So, for instance, we were just talking about peace in the Middle East, and you heard Trump, and he was like, yeah, he's like, these people were involved in this, I think he said like Qatar and Egypt, and he named a bunch of different countries, and then you had Israel, and then you had Hamas. They sat down, and some people were questioning him, and they were like, well, why was Hamas even at the table? Well, which is it? Do you want conflict or do you want resolution? Resolution requires talking. And that means even talking with people that are your enemies, maybe even people that want to hurt you or kill you, right? If you can sit down and have a conversation with them and work out so that you no longer have conflict, that is always a good thing. So I'll always support that. And then just as a podcast host myself, I will say this. I will sit down and have a conversation with anybody I please. I am simply not going to be bound to any idea of, oh, you can talk to this person, but not this person. This person is verboten. I don't operate like that. And since I won't operate like that, I'm not going to hold anybody else to that standard. That doesn't mean that I don't think that sometimes some people maybe shouldn't get the table, right? Like it's not, and it's a fine line. So like if you take somebody like Destiny, I think we've seen enough from him that most people should be like, I'm not interested in hearing him. I don't think he knows what he's talking about. And he's got such a bad reputation that, you know what? Go get yourself cleaned up first. You got some introspection. You need some work on you before you get a seat at the table. Now, if somebody does bring him to the table, I just won't watch, for the most part. Like sometimes you can't avoid it. Somebody gets on a show. You wish they hadn't got on the show. The show gets popular. It goes viral, or maybe a clip or two goes viral. And that's what I'll end up talking about, But I'm not going to make big calls and try to get him canceled per se, just because I dislike him and think he's a horrible human being, right? Like that's not how I operate. And so I'm not going to hold that. So I always will support sitting down and have a conversation with people, especially if it's your enemy. So let's look at this first clip here. Let's go over to Dad TV. All right, let's turn on the TV and we will see what they had to say. Now, look, before we dive into this, I want to tell you, this was a 3.5-hour conversation. I have not watched all of it just yet. I'm in the middle of it. 3.5 hours is going to take me like a week to watch, just because of my schedule and the things that I've got going on, because I can't necessarily sit down. I don't have the opportunity just to listen in the background and pick it up. I listen explicitly so that I can, have thoughts about it or pay attention. And a lot of my day is spent doing many things. So I don't necessarily have the opportunity to devote a 3.5-hour block of time, or even, 1.5-ish hours if I put it on 2 times speed. So what I did was I just grabbed a few clips that I saw floating around, with the thought being, okay, if these are the clips that people are interested in, these are the ones that I will talk about. So here we go. Oops, that's the wrong button. Let me fix that. There we go. I clicked the wrong button. How about this?
What I would say, though, about 28, and this is maybe new, is like when you look at what Trump is doing, he's creating a lot of tension right now. The ICE raids, the militarization of law enforcement, the war everywhere in Venezuela, Ukraine, Iran, the advance of AI and technology. It's like, if a Democrat wins in 29, I'm moving to another country, because whoever comes into power from the left is going to want blood, because they're going to want vengeance for all. If they regroup, that's sort of presumptuous. Yeah. If they regroup and reorganize, they're going to kill us, because like in Chicago, I live right by where this is happening. They set up this detention facility. They're rounding people up, putting hype edits of it on Twitter. It's pissing liberals off. Liberals are going to the place, protesting. The cops are beating the shit out of them and laughing and taunting them. More protesters come. Now they're ramming cars into ICE cars. The cops are shooting them. Now they're bringing in DHS. It's like, we've gone so far up this escalation ladder in like 3 months. And what I fear is that Trump is not going to finish the job. He's not going to salt the earth and destroy Antifa. So all he's doing is pissing these people off. And that means the violence is going to get worse. They're going to organize. We're going to get like Mamdani for president in 28 or, something along that vein. And that's why I think it's really important that like a Republican does win, but it just can't be Vance. So like, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it, because they're really barking up the wrong tree, in my opinion. They're signing checks they can't cash.
I mean, the man got a point, right? Think about it for a second. This is what I tried to say the other day. A lot of people on the right, they've got the political power, they've got the cultural power, they're beating up on the left, and they're like, we're going to do unto them what they did to us. And I keep saying, this is a bad idea. And they're like, yeah, well, we got to show them. We can't be afraid to use a little bit of power because that's what they did to us. And the idea is that from people on the right that support this, their idea is they're going to beat the left into submission. And it's weird to me that they even think that it's possible just based on the fact that the left was unable to beat you into submission. So the left beat up on the right, and when the right got power, did they turn around and say, man, we learned our lesson. We're going to be behaved according to the left, right? Did they say that? No. They immediately said, we're going after you. We're going to get you. Oh, you make fun of Charlie Kirk? We're going to get you fired, no matter who you are, whether you're a low-level person or, supposedly somebody with power. We're coming after you. Okay? Well, what do you think is going to happen when the tables yet again turn? Do you think that they're going to all of a sudden get their newfound power and be like, yeah, we learned our lesson. We're not going after the right because, man, they punished us so bad the last time. No, they're going to be viciously angry, and they're going to be like, we're coming after you even harder now because whatever you did to us, we're doing to you whatever multifold. It's a game of ping pong, right? Just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this is what I've been warning about. This is why I said, like with the whole Jimmy Kimmel issue, it's not that I supported him so much as I said, look, you can say that. I think that the way to go about it is the way that they're going about it is incorrect. And I think it's going to backfire in the long run. Because guess what? Jimmy Kimmel is still on the air, and all that controversy, now he's just going to be brewing about it. Did he learn his lesson? No. In fact, remember a lot of people, when he got back on the air, they came back and they said he didn't even give an apology. So you already know he didn't, quote unquote, learn his lesson. So now he's just sitting and waiting for when he has the opportunity to be in a position of power to say or do what he wants to do or support others saying and doing what they want to do. So I think that right now, the right, they're being very foolish, and it sounds like I'm not the only one that believes this. Nick Fuentes, you heard him say it. He's like, man, they're going to kill us. They're coming out. He wants to move to a different. Now, I know everybody says, if so-and-so gets elected, I'm moving to another country. And maybe he believes it. Maybe he's really, maybe he really means it. Maybe he doesn't. I don't really know. But he makes a good point that rather than saying that, coupling that idea with a particular personality, which I think is foolish, I think what he's really trying to say is if somebody, if a Democrat comes into power, the next presidential election cycle, it's going to be very bad for people on the right. It might actually be worth moving. And he might be right. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to move. I will stick it out and I will fight the good fight. And whoever's in power is probably who I'm going to hit the most. So if it's the right, well, then I'm going to come after them. If it's the left, then I'll go after them. Because as a libertarian, well, as it turns out, neither one of them are very good with power from my perspective. So I just thought that was pretty interesting part of the conversation. And I think it's worth noting. So let's go back and hear. I got 3 clips altogether. Let's go back and let's hear what other things that they had to say. So I thought that this next one was pretty interesting as well.
For me, it was never really about the Holocaust in itself, because early on, I watched a lot of documentaries, like the canon of Holocaust denial documentaries and essays, and I found a lot of the arguments compelling. And then I saw that other people were pushing back on that. And I have good friends of mine who are they're fellow travelers, let's say. And they adamantly insist it did happen. And they send me blog posts and things.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you sit down and say, so is this really about World War II historicity debate or historiographical debate? And to me, that's sort of missing the point. To me, the Holocaust is just like, it is just a central part of the Jewish identity story, which is that if the white people get too much power, they're going to kill us all. And that means if we don't have enough power, they're going to kill us all. If they can critique us, they're going to kill us all. It's wrapped up, and this has been pointed out before, that more Jewish people think that the Holocaust is central to their identity than believe that believing in God is central to their identity. And that just tells you about what Jewish identity really is and how it's political. And so to me, what matters more, I don't know. I think it was exaggerated. I think it was embellished. I don't know that 6 million exactly died, but I don't know. I'm not an expert, and I don't really even care about being an expert. To me, it's more about, like you said, I don't want this trauma imposed on me and for it to define our political order, because that's really the issue.
Well, that part I think is 100% reasonable. And in fact, as you said, that the Holocaust is more central to Jewish identity than God. It's certainly true for non-religious Jews, and even maybe for some religious Jews. Like it is very central to Jewish identity, and I think in unhealthy ways.
So they make a very interesting point. Let's step away from his skepticism of 6 million. Personally, I'm comfortable with the 6 million. And I think I've said this before. There was an interesting movie called The Substitute. It's just a movie. And in The Substitute, the main character, what is his name? I'm trying to blank on his name. But anyway, his wife or girlfriend is a teacher at a school, and she gets assaulted. It's like an inner city school. Or no, I think it was a private school, and she gets assaulted or something like that by some of the students, and she's telling him that she saw some concerning things, and so he goes undercover into the school, and he's like this special forces mercenary type guy, but he's able to fabricate his background so that he looks like just a standard substitute teacher, and he goes in there, and they're talking about the Holocaust. And one of the students, there's some underlying white supremacy, like actual white supremacy in the movie, like where they're, they actually believe in, some of the ideas. And one of the students is like, yeah, he basically questions this 6 million. And so the substitute teacher, he's like, well, how many do you think it was? And the guy's like, 600,000. He's like, that seems like a more reasonable number. And so the teacher then goes and makes this very interesting comment. He's like, 600,000 is a lot. Like, in what world is 600,000 just a few, like no big deal? That's a huge deal in and itself. So it's 600,000, if that were the number, which I don't believe that it is, even if it were, and we're exaggerating and saying it's 6 million, 600,000 is an awful number of people to be murdered and killed. Or murdered. That's a horrid number. So any number after that is just makes it worse. That's all that does. Just makes it worse. Just makes it more gross and more horrid. You know what I mean? So it's like you get to a certain point where the number, in a sense, doesn't really matter because it's only worse after that. And there is, there's no specific number per se, but there is a point where you just like, this is a disgusting, horrid event. Can't believe that it absolutely happened in human history. Awful, disgusting. And then after that, we start running out of words to really describe it any worse. Does that make sense? So I don't really care that he's questioning the number. It doesn't matter to me. But I think his broader point was actually what we should talk about, and kind of follows with what the clip before that said, where he was like, where they're talking about like this Jewish identity and how it's, infiltrated into our politics. And I think the issue with identity overall is making our politics that much worse. Whether it's your Jewish identity, whether you identify as a person of color, whether you identify as a white person, whatever, I think identity the idea of identities has destroyed our politics and our ability to just have policy debate and say, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea? Here's why. And he kind of alludes to it there. When something is your identity and it's coupled with your politics, disagreement with a policy idea effectively is perceived as being a disagreement with your identity. This is why you have people who will say, you have in the trans community where if I disagree with a particular policy and I say we don't need that policy, somebody says you're trying to erase trans people because they have it coupled, because they've taken their politics, they've taken their identity, and they've merged them so tightly that disagreement with one is disagreement with the other and is perceived to be, I don't even want you to exist. And I think this is bad. We need to decouple our identities from our politics, because politics, at the end of the day, is policy. And policy has to cover a multitude of people. This is not Japan, where you're predominantly Japanese, right, in your demographics. This is the United States of America. I would argue that it's the most diverse demographic of any country anywhere, right? And I mean diversity not only in ethnicity, in gender, orientation, all these things, all over the place. And we keep getting more sub cultures, right? Like, you can't just say the left or the right, because there's so much diversity even within those, right? You've got your radical, you've got your middle of the road left, your middle of the road right. You've got your, closer to center, left and right. You've got your extremists, and then you've got priorities like we talked about with Antifa a few moments ago, where even Antifa as a decentralized organization, or not organization, but movement, even Antifa has people that prioritize different things. Some may prioritize environmentalism, whereas others might prioritize gender equality or whatever, right? So our country is just simply way too diverse for us to tolerate the merging of politics and identity. And honestly, I'm not really sure how we get away from that. I would love to have that answer. I don't. If you have an answer, or if you have some ideas, throw them in the chat, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching at a later time. I would love to hear some of the ideas on how we get away, how we decouple this, so that we can say, yeah, you have your identity, but just because I disagree with the policy doesn't mean that I literally want you to not exist, right? And the same thing happens with Israel and Jews. For many, not all, I have plenty of Jewish friends that would vehemently argue and say, yeah, the fact that I'm a Jew, doesn't have any bearing on disagreement over foreign policy with Israel. But there are many Jews that have explicitly, unambiguously come out and basically said, if you disagree with these policies, that's because you don't want Israel to exist. And it's like, well, wait a minute. No, I just think these policies are bad policies. Maybe we can have a conversation as to why I'm wrong or why you're wrong. And this is why I support Nick having a sit down with Dave, right? Or vice versa, however you want to see it, right? This is why I support this conversation, because we should always be willing to sit down with people that we somewhat agree with, or that we agree with, in as much as we would with somebody that we somewhat disagree with or strongly disagree with. This is why I always champion people like Daryl Davis, he's a black man, a black jazz musician, and he will sit down with literal KKK members. We're not talking about somebody that he's, broad brushing and saying, hey, this person is white supremacist. We're talking about people that literally are saying they are a white supremacist. They identify that way. And he sits down. And then when he sat down with them later, years later, he could say, guess what? Some 200 people have left the KKK just because I got to know them. Right? It didn't require clinging to our identities in such a way that you can't have an honest conversation about disagreement. Think about what you just watched. Okay? Dave is Jewish. And he sat down with Nick Fuentes, who's few feet from him, eyeball to eyeball, and said that he does not agree with the narrative of 600 or 6 million people dying in the Holocaust. He told Dave that. And did you see Dave crumble and like, oh my God, I can't believe you? No. Why? Because it's not so attached to his identity. So he can sit down and he can be like, oh, you disagree with that. And then they actually went on to talk about a larger issue, a broader point. This is objectively a good thing, right? And so I've always supported this idea. And I think this is what we get when we're willing to sit down with people that we may not agree with. But and the more you disagree with somebody and the more that you can sit down with them, I think the bigger the gains are going to be. So we've got one more clip here, and then we'll go back to the Dad TV, and then we will see what they said here. I thought this was also interesting. Again, I just picked clips that I saw floating around on the internet because I have not yet watched. I've probably watched, I don't know, about 45 minutes of it, is how much I was able to get in. So we'll check it out. All right, so let's see here. This last clip.
If another group has power over you, there's like an inherent...
Pause this, and then we will... I gotta... There, so I can hear it. You might have been able to hear, but I couldn't. All right, let's go.
If another group has power over you, there's like an inherent suspicion because it's like, well, this guy's not really looking out for me because he doesn't look like me and he didn't come from where I came from and he's not like me. And the problem with this is after there's so much conflict, the non-whites don't trust whites, and the whites are rightly skeptical of the non-whites because the non-whites seem to have license to hate whites. Non-whites have like inherent distrust, basically like a veiled hatred and resentment, and they feel completely able to express that. And so the fundamental question is, how now do the races share power in a way that isn't contentious? How do we find an understanding? And I don't know if that's even possible, because the concern from the alt-right was always, in particular in a democracy, in an open society, when politics gets racialized, it basically just becomes like a race war. Yeah. It turns into like a soft form of a racial war. And, now they're saying woke right. I think the reason they're doing that, and they want to, just kind of get rid of identity politics and find a consensus, is because they want for the whites now not to fight the non-whites. They want a situation where, like you said, we're going to have happy liberal whites, blacks, Hispanics, Asians all living together. I just don't know how possible that is at this point. And that's where people start to talk about, can we disintegrate? We were forcibly integrated with immigration and after Civil Rights Act. Can we now go our separate ways? I don't know that that's actually even a good thing, though. I don't know that that's even like a good answer. But I would say where it starts is just with honesty. Ultimately, there's got to be a recognition that there are legitimate grievances on both sides, and there are illegitimate grievances.
Right.
Spot on. Like, I don't even know that you could articulate it any better. I said this a while back. I wish I remember which episode it was that I said this. But I said, black folk need to be able to hear the grievance of white folk, even if the grievance doesn't make sense, right? Like you see on social media, people will say like, oh, I've got black fatigue, which I think is just gibberish, okay? But they should be able to say it. And they need to be able to say why. Why do they have it? Well, a lot of white people, they see video after video of black people acting poorly. And I think there's some problems with that. But they see that and they start getting concerned. And they're like, well, can I trust black people to be around them? And now I think it's a bit absurd. I pass black people all the time. Give them a nod. How are you doing? Doing fine. Good day, whatever. Sometimes we don't talk, whatever. But it's very cordial. It's cordial or nothing, right? Just walk by and we don't even notice each other. We're busy. There, maybe we're in the grocery store. I'm walking down the aisle. A black person's walking down the aisle. They're looking on their side. I'm just saying, like, it's not a conflict, right? I interact in some way, or I pass by, I'm in the vicinity, the proximity of black people on a regular basis. And I think we tend to forget these experiences that don't stand out. So then the one time that maybe we get into a yelling match with a black person, and then we're like, that becomes what we remember. And so then maybe there's a real grievance there. Maybe there's not. Like he said, maybe there's an illegitimate grievance. We're just remembering something too much at the expense of all the better experiences that we've had or the neutral experiences that we've had. But how do we work that out? Number one, like I said, and like what they're doing, we have conversations. We need to be able to, now I'm not really a white person. I'm kind of like white-ish. But a white person should be able to sit down, talk to a black person, and say, you know what? Y'all are too loud at the movie theater. I'm not trying to make jokes. Like, they should be able to sit down and say, you're too loud at the movie theater. You're disruptive. And you know what? Sometimes when you get angry at the manager in the store, you guys are unhinged and you're talking crazy, blah, 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 whatever, right? And you're just, whatever. And then black people need to be able to look at the white person and say, you know what? You do not empathize with us enough. You do not consider our feelings with, like, when it comes to policing or how we feel in our community. You guys are too busy painting us with a broad brush, whatever. Like, they need to be able to have these conversations. And then through those conversations, without people getting angry, then what they can do is they can sort out the illegitimate from the legitimate. Because when you're looking somebody in the eye, it's a lot different than if you're talking about it on a podcast or if you're talking about, in a thing with your friends who are maybe look like you, right? You're just going to have the conversation is going to be different because now you have to come face to face with what you believe. And if what you believe is true or not true is not really nearly as relevant as can you say it? Can you put it out? Let me try to remember. Let me try to tie this in. I'm gonna pull up something here real quick. I'm not. I don't think I can put it on the screen, but maybe I can do that. We'll see. Let's see here. I'm gonna pull up something I think is very useful. Let me see if I can find it here. I posted it the other day. Here it is. So is that it? No, that's not it. That's not what I wanted. Let me go back. I'm looking. I will find it. Here it is. Okay. So I talk a lot about Dorothy Thompson. She was a journalist during Nazi Germany. And she was actually one of the top journalists at the time. And she is notable because she was the first journalist that got told to leave Germany because of her critical reporting. So the Nazi regime was like, you got to get out. Get out because we don't like your reporting. She was very critical of him. And then at one point, she was very supportive of the Zionist movement. And then she backed away from it because she felt like, hey, some of the things that Israel was doing were incorrect. Okay? Like they were going too far. So this comes from the Journal of Palestinian Studies. But I'm going to be mostly quoting Dorothy herself. Okay, because she was eventually branded an anti-Semite. And so it says, the tactic of using the term anti-Semitism as a weapon against dissenters from Israeli policy is not new. Dorothy Thompson, the distinguished journalist who was one of the earliest enemies of Nazism, found herself criticizing the policies of Israel shortly after its creation. Despite her valiant crusade against Hitler, she too was subject to the charge of anti-Semitism. In a letter to the Jewish newsletter, April 6, 1951, here's what she wrote. Quote, really, I think continued emphasis should be put upon the extreme damage to the Jewish community of branding people like myself as anti-Semitic. The state of, and let me click on this next one, the state of Israel has got to learn to live in the same atmosphere of free criticism which every other state in the world must endure. There are many subjects on which writers in this country are, because of these pressures, becoming craven and mealy-mouthed. But people don't like to be craven and mealy-mouthed. Every time one yields to such pressure, one is filled with contempt, and this self-contempt works itself out in resentment of those who caused it. Let's tie that in here. If we cannot be honest with each other, if I have to become mealy-mouthed about you, about a group that you belong to, If I have to become mealy-mouthed, I might. But that's going to further my resentment toward you and your group. It doesn't matter whether it's the Jews, the blacks, if you will, right? The whites, the Hispanics. It doesn't matter who it is, right? If I have to silence myself and I can't express current feelings, I'm going to become resentful. But if I can, and I can have a conversation with you, then we can start to work out what is legitimate and what is illegitimate. So if nothing else, the path forward for racial harmony, or as close to harmony as we can get, is going to be conversations. I support Dave getting together with Nick. I know that Nick is a very charged individual. He's got a lot of baggage from the background. He talks about that on the show. They make some good points. I encourage you to go check it out. It's in the show notes. It is 3.5 hours, so maybe grab you a couple drinks and some snacks so you can sit down and listen to the whole thing. But with that, let's go ahead and head back to the chat, see if there's anything else in the chat for you guys. And then if not, then I will head on out of here. So let's see what we got here. I think there's only one comment here. It's a pretty safe bet that Larry Sharpe would cancel Kathy Hochul's traditional Democrat Party racism. Free Dexter Taylor. Absolutely. I hope that Larry, I ultimately hope, that's really the only comment there. I really hope that Larry can make some progress this time around, like even more. Like if he doesn't win, I hope that his progress is sufficient that people start listening and they start hearing what he has to say. Because Larry is going to agree with me on pretty much most everything that I said today, particularly about let's have a conversation. Let's sit down and talk. Air your grievances out. What do you got to say? Like he's going to do that. Let's see. Interesting. So we'll go back to the chat here real quick. One popped in there. Robert Johnston, I think it's the first time that I've seen your name. This is why the older I get, almost 49, the more I realize there is no such thing as multicultural harmony and never was. There never was, but I don't know that there never can be. If I will agree, and by the way, I'm 47, so I'm about there with you. I would say that the one thing that keeps us from any kind of harmony, multicultural or racial harmony, would be the agitators among us, the ones that want to stoke up the flames. And that's where people like me and other people who do want harmony, or at least getting as close to it as we can, I think we need to come out and sharply criticize those folks. And we need to say, unexcusable. But here's the catch. It's going to be the most powerful when it's our own. We have a problem in our country where it's very easy to criticize somebody from team other, but not when it's team ours. And so if I've got somebody like, say, I'm a libertarian, and if some of my libertarian peers are coming out and they're saying something that I think is aggravating the problem, it is my duty, in a sense, to speak up and say, knock it off, because you're disrupting what could be, right? And what could be, it's not a guarantee, right? There's no, like, I'm not saying we can absolutely have multicultural harmony. We might not be able to have perfect harmony because people have different wants, different needs. We're going to want to have different governances, in our society. There's Christians out there that don't want porn. There's other people that do love porn, right? Just as one simple example, it goes all over the place. We talked about it with Dearborn, Michigan. There's the imam going out and he's like, look, if you're a store owner, I don't want you selling pork and other things that are haram. We're going to protest against you. So people have a different view of how they want society to function and be organized. So we may not be able to have harmony in full, like in a utopian sense. But that doesn't mean that we can't work toward getting as close as possible. And if nothing else, if close as possible brings us to a strong reduction in violence and increased interaction with each other, then that's a good thing. So, and I think that's where we can strive for, and I think that's a reasonable goal. I don't see any reason why we cannot say we can get pretty close and reduce a lot of this as much as possible, but it's going to take rethinking how we approach our interactions. So Yes, and then Robert says, I agree. Those agitators will always exist. They will. And that's why if you've got somebody like the Jesse Jacksons of the world, who is it that's going to be able to tell Jesse Jackson to, go take a seat? Well, it's not going to be the white people, right? Because that's literally playing into his narrative. It's going to be the black folk. Black folk are going to have to be like, we hear what you're saying. Maybe you've got some good intentions behind it, but sit down. You're causing more problems than you're resolving. That's what needs to happen. So if we can get that to happen, if we can get that through people's heads, and so that they will follow through on that, then we will get to a better place in society. All right, folks, with that, I'm going to, I think that's a wrap. I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring, whether you're watching it live or, you're watching it later. Come back and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Did I miss anything? Do I need to offer a correction? Or perhaps you just want to be promiscuous with your praise. I am all ears. But with that, I'm going to be out. And remember, no show tomorrow. I will be out. We'll be back Monday. I've got some things I got to do tomorrow. So I've got to go adult. It's time for some adulting. But right now, it's time for closing. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.